Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Robert Mondavi Winery. We're speaking to you from the edge of the To Kalon Vineyard, which is the beautiful vineyard right behind me, here in the vineyard room. My name is Carl Jaeger, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Robert Mondavi Winery here in the Napa Valley. And it's my pleasure to have with me today and to introduce Genevieve Janssens, who has on and off been with us since 1978, and someone who knows the To Kalon Vineyard inside and out. Genevieve started with Mr. Mondavi, as I said, in 1978. Spent a brief time at our neighbor across the street, Opus One, and then we lured her back here in 1997 to be the Director of Winemaking. I'm also so happy to tell you that Genevieve Janssens has been named Winemaker of the Year by Wine Enthusiast magazine, and we think it is a title for this year that is well deserved, and we're so happy that she has been honored this way. And also, our To Kalon Vineyard has been honored by the California Growers Association as the Vineyard of the Year. And so we're just so happy with those accolades, because I think that it helps people understand what Mr. Mondavi wanted us to do so long ago, was make great wines that stand in the company of the world's finest. And he chose this property as the place to start that long journey that we have been on and that we are still on today, making quality wines. Genevieve, thank you for joining us today to take us through our Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve 2007 and 2008. Thank you for being here today.
It's wonderful to be here. It's a pleasure to present our wines today. It's always a joy.
I know that the 2007 vintage was written about and was written about as one of the classic vintages of the last few decades. And we love the wine from 2007, and for those of you that are enjoying it now or cellaring it, it's a great wine. But we're also so happy with the 2008 vintage, how it was for us here at To Kalon. Can you tell us a little bit about the 2008 wine and why you think it turned out the way that it did?
I think it's absolutely a wonderful vintage. This is two vintage of drought, what we call in California, so no rain during the springtime. And we know that Napa Valley has a Mediterranean climate. But in the same time, because it's close to the ocean, we receive the fog. So the 2007 and the 2008, if we have to compare them, the 2007 did not receive any rain during the winter time. It was really a true drought and through the spring. The 2008 had a lot of water during the winter, and then springtime was extremely dry. And then we have an April pretty difficult. We had 25 nights of frost. And right away, because of that, we had a very light crop, and we had no vigor in the vineyard, teeny berries, small cluster, 25% less crop. So already we are set to have a concentration and very intense flavors.
So if I'm reading you correctly, what you're telling me is because the crop was smaller, that gave us a more intensity of flavor in the crop that we did get.
Yes, absolutely.
And is controlling for frost difficult? Is there a lot that we have to do on those nights when we're having frost, or is it just we let nature take its course?
No. We have beautiful soldiers of the vineyard, and this is the manager of the vineyard, who all night they are running, rushing, and turning on the vents to prevent the frost. So we had almost 25 nights, is almost a month, of them working very hard in the vineyard at midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, and I think for me what that highlights is the precision and how hard we work here at Robert Mondavi Winery and at To Kalon, that when we talk about terroir, it's not only the soil, it's not only the climate, it's not only the changing weather patterns, but it's also then how the people that we have here, the vineyard team with Matt Ashby, the winemaking team with Gustavo and Rich, led by yourself, it's that interaction of people reacting to what's happening with the weather to ensure that we're getting that consistent quality, that high level quality. It seems to me that, for people to understand, even when we get frost like that, we're ready. We're ready to that level of detail. Were there anything else besides the dry spring and the frost that you think really had an impact on the 2008 in terms of the vineyard?
I think we had a cool summer for the 2007, and we have a very ideal condition, so a little bit warmer in 2008. So the maturity went at the very end. But I wanted to let you know then, usually when we have two vintages with no rain during the springtime, we have power and we have intensity. And that's a little bit what we call the classic of Tokalan. But it's Mr. Mondavi's favorite weather because it's very structured and Tokalan is expressed in its true value of tannin. But there's other vintages like 06, 05, which we had rain during the springtime, but we were delicious, but more fleshy, more approachable. So I think vintages are beautiful to understand. So it's just like opening a book and reading what happened during the vineyards. And here is the wine, and we can talk about that.
Now, we're going to taste the wines in just a moment, but if I could take us out of the vineyard and into the cellar for a moment. In the year 2000, we, Mr. Mondavi and yourself, did a complete reimagination of the Tokalan cellar. What were some of the one or two major things that changed in our winemaking process with that Tokalan project in 2000 that you think are now having an impact on our wines today?
Mr. Mondavi wanted to continue his pursuit of excellence, and he started during the era of the phylloxera by planting a lot of very narrow spacing vineyards, what we call here the 4x4, so inspired by the Bordeaux viticulture. So when we had those vineyards in production, we needed to think about, okay, what is next? And next was, of course, the oak tanks, because the tannin in Tokalan, the expression of the tannin are extremely strong, big structure, and big, huge tannin. So we needed to work right away during fermentation those tannins, so to prepare the wine to be ready to go to barrels. So the oak tanks, and we purchased 56 oak tanks, and we are fermenting all our best vineyards in that winery. Another point that we wanted to address and we wanted to pursue for excellence is the gravity flow philosophy. So all those small vineyards, 4x4, and the best vineyards of different trellis system, we harvest them in small containers, like 15 kilos, it's maybe 25, 35 pounds, very small. So we bring them on the top of the tanks. So we elevate them with an elevator. And then we have a sorting table. We have a team of sorting people watching every single clusters, being sure then everything which will go into the tanks will be what we are looking for. And then after that, we move to fill the tanks, we move the system, the crushing system from one tank to another. So nothing's to compare with what we have at the classic fashion to do the wine, where you need a must pump at the bottom line of the winery. We bring the fruit to the top. So that's really, really paying attention to quality.
And so that triple sorting that we do, we pick everything by hand, we then sort the grapes by hand, and what is it that we're trying to sort out that we take out, and what is it that we want to go into the fermentation?
Depending of the vintage. Some vintage, it will be dehydrated fruit. Other vintage will be behind not green fruit. Some vintage, it will be maybe rot. It depends. But definitely, we don't want something which is not very solid and homogeneous.
Okay. And so, just to go back to that 4x4 spacing, why is the 4x4 spacing important? Is it competition amongst the vines, or what is it that brings to us?
Yes, it's competition between the vines. We have very, very small vines. I like to call them the bonsai of the way we are managing vineyards, and they are competing together. So the roots are not going to compete with the same type of soil and water. So right away, the vigor of the vines will be completely tamed down. And so because of that, the cluster will be smaller, the berries will be smaller, and the intensity will be bigger.
Wonderful. So I think we should taste the wine, and let's start with the 2007. And we've invited a few people from Massachusetts to be with us here today. So they're tasting along with us, and hopefully we'll have some questions for us about the wines. We'll start with the 2007.
Sure. So very, very intense fruit. It's pretty... Very silky, very soft, very gentle, very tender, but at the same time, so much power. So it's a very complex wine. And the vineyards which are making those two wines are known to be always excellent. So they have a very high pedigree in Tokalan. And what I like to say about Tokalan, it's a first growth of Napa Valley. And what is the definition of first growth? Because it's an easy word to use, but how can we really explain a first growth? And usually it's always when we have the soil and we have a fantastic environment. Every year, it can be a good year, a less good year, difficult weather. We always have something good coming from the vineyards. And that's why we call it first growth.
First growth. And I think that's an important point to make, is that when you think about Tokalan as one of the first growths of the world, it's certainly the first growth of California, where year after year, that quality, if you look at what Tokalan has given us since 1971, when we first made our CSR, Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve, and I know that over time, the amount of Tokalan or the percentage of Tokalan in our Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve blend has increased.
Yes.
And I think that it's just with that understanding of what Tokalan as a vineyard does give us year after year. The 2008, how would you say, let's have the taste of this wine, and let's talk about any differences to the 2007 that we think we see.
It's younger.
Yes?
Everybody can say that. So you have, for me, maybe here you had a little bit the cassis and the very nice, the wood was a little bit different. Here it's much more darker fruit, blackberry, wild, a little bit more herbs, so which is typical to Tokalan. And the oak are yet very young, but still going to be blended in the future. But it's a very, what I like is fleshy and at the same time juicy. And because 07 might be a little bit on the dry side, this one is just spectacular. It's just like a peacock. It just goes, the tail,
yes,
opening very quickly.
Oh, it's just the intensity of fruit and flavor that I'm getting, both on the nose and on the palate. And I'm always reminded of Margaret Mondavi always reminds me of what Bob said about Cabernet, is that it should have the power of a Pavarotti, but the softness of a baby's bottom.
And that's a 2008.
And that's,
and
yes.
It's just incredible. It's very lengthy and very, what Mr. Mondavi loved in his Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve, they are not shouting, but they are here to be paired with friends and food, and has a very strong presence.
How much Tokalan as a percentage in the 2008 would we have? Somewhere in the 80%, I believe.
I think
80 to 85% Tokalan.
Yeah.
So when you think about this wine and you think about what that Tokalan vineyard gives us, while we do pull from a few select vineyards here in Oakville, that really the principal component of our Cabernet program is Tokalan.
Yes, it will continue because we are on a program of replanting 50% of the vineyard within the next 5 years. And so we will always, what we have in mind is to continue that legacy of Tokalan and be sure that in 10 years, the new generation will always have those great wines because of the great vineyard. So we are the stewards of that Tokalan, and I really believe in it. And it's absolutely wonderful to work with those type of vineyards.
So with you and Matt and the replanting program, you said 50% of the vineyard will be replanted within the next 5 years. How will that affect, do you have then a plan for parts of the vineyard that you can still draw from so that
Yes.
we can keep this great wine?
Absolutely, it's all well thought, and we will always have the great vineyards which will make these wines, but slowly we are, for example, for our Tokalan Z block, it has been planted in 1975. We removed just 50%, and then in 5-10 years we will move the other one. So we go slowly.
Go slowly, block by block, very carefully.
We want to be sure that we always can have that wonderful pedigrees in our wines.
It's my understanding that Mr. Mondavi visited Bordeaux in the early 1960s, and it was there that he got the inspiration. He came back, he had tasted 1961 Margaux, amongst other great wines, and came back and said, we have the soil, we have the climate, we've got the knowledge, we have the know-how. why shouldn't we make wines that stand in the company of the world's finest?
Yeah.
And I can assure you that what Mr. Mondavi asked of us was always to move forward and always look forward and say, how can we be better at what we do? And I think when you taste the wines and you see the results, you see the team that Genevieve leads just continues that great leadership and that spirit of Mr. Mondavi in working hard to be good at what we do, and that excellent is never good enough. We keep trying. I'd like to say then, if any of the folks that are with us this morning have any questions about the wines that they've tasted or about our Cabernet Reserve program here at Mondavi Winery, we'd be happy to answer a question if you have one.
What is the varietal composition of the wine?
For the 2008?
Yes.
So it's 85% of Cabernet Sauvignon, 8% of Cabernet Franc, and 7% of Petit Verdot. That was a vintage where all the Bordeaux reds did really well in Tokalan.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that we can answer for you? Yes, sir.
One more. What percentage of the Tokalan vineyard is owned by Robert Mondavi Winery?
So the vineyard itself is about we own 450 acres of Tokalan, and then there's another gentleman, Mr. Beckstoffer, who owns about 90 acres, it's my understanding, if I have the numbers close. So the majority is owned, an overwhelming majority is owned by the Robert Mondavi Winery. Any other questions that we can answer for you about the wines or about the winemaking program here?
What's the expected lifetime between the 07 and the 08 as far as cellar?
Great. So what he's asking is, if I were to cellar these wines, and we like you to drink them with friends and family, but cellaring can really reward to really get that great taste and aging on the wine. Is there really a difference in a first growth vineyard like this, or will there be a difference in vintages in terms of their ageability from your perspective, Genevieve?
I think both are going to age extremely nicely. They all come from the same vineyard. You have an incredible structure. We have a very good tannin and mouthfeel. So both will age, and I always like to say 20, 30 years, and even more, but it's a little bit difficult to imagine that in 40 years. But we are testing now the wine that Mr. Mondavi made in the 60s and 70s, and they are still good. So a long life, both.
So I'd like to end on just sort of thanking our bottle shop owners, our grocery store owners, our restaurateurs, and other folks who have been selling Robert Mondavi wines for years. We'd like to also thank all of our distributor partners who make it possible for the excellence that goes on here at Robert Mondavi Winery to get out into the world. And to say that when you're out representing these wines, please just remember the hard work that goes on here with Genevieve Janssens and her winemaking team, as well as the Tokalan Vineyard and that Tokalan cellar renovation that took place, and just how important this wine was to Mr. Mondavi. This wine is our beacon for our Cabernet program here. And then, of course, we have our Oakville Cabernet Sauvignon, which we're very proud of, our Oakville appellated wine, and then we have a Napa Valley blend, which also sees a high percentage of Oakville and Tokalan in the blend. And that really is the mainstay of our Cabernet program here at the winery. And if you have questions, please feel free to contact us at Robert Mondavi Winery, and we thank you so much for your support. And Genevieve, with the 2008, and to our group assembled here, cheers, and we thank you for all your hard work and for being here today.
Thank you. Cheers.